Okay.
That's very good as our fire representative.
Right, yep.
All right, looks like YouTube's firing up. Remember how to block this.
Maybe mute your speakers. Mike, these are going to function on both, right? The owl.
They are. This is where the same thing happened last time and I should have taken detailed notes of how I did. Maybe it's recorded. If I turn that off, does that help? Can everybody still hear me on the Zoom? Maybe that works. Because that way this isn't playing back.
That's
Okay.
definitely done something because we haven't heard Rob again yet. So
I haven't been robbed yet again. So hopefully people who are on YouTube can hear this, even with the 2-second delay,
I'll tell you,
20-second delay.
I can look at it here and yes.
Yeah, let's just confirm, because that way, if people, want to watch this back later, they'll have audio.
You do, okay. I'm looking up Lewisboro.
Carol says she can hear us.
Well, Carol's on the Zoom.
Oh, she's on Zoom.
Yeah,
It's Lewisboro.
I assume that, it actually should record. It's just not playing back, so I'll go ahead and get started. It's now 7:05, so I'll call our meeting to order for the August edition of the Antenna Advisory Board. On our agenda tonight, I think the main point.
It's working.
It's working?
Mhm.
Excellent. I think the main items after we get to our housekeeping of adopting the minutes. Hopefully everybody got to review the minutes from our April meeting. But wanted to discuss the Homeland Towers cell tower site preference update, which is really building off of the presentation that they gave to the town board earlier in the month. I think it was the Monday the 8th, that they talked about it. Then we are getting a continued indication from the Cityscape wireless, or the Cityscape folks, that their wireless infrastructure project is coming to a close. End of September, I think, is the timeline. So we kind of want to be prepared for that. Would like to get any updates we've had on emergency services. I've sent a note to Brian on this, and maybe you can help out with this as well. Sam is one, making sure that we take in emergency services considerations in the new cell towers, and I think this came to a head over the summer, both with the Vista Tower being down. Brian had emailed me about this in June, that calls out to the volunteer firefighters were not getting through because the cell tower is down. And then I also understand that the Lewisboro police have had some radio issues as well. So I thought it would be a good idea to keep that on our radar screen.
Right.
And then updating the wired internet service communications with Optimum, which Sam has been great at keeping on them, particularly as it relates to service issues in and around the South Seattle Presbyterian Church.
Right. And then that whole business area was affected.
Few more people coming in. So, and then, so that's sort of our existing business, a kind of new business, is kind of looking directly at, some of the comments, that the board made in response to, the town board made in response to the Homeland Tower presentation. And there was some discussion in the town board meeting about potentially having the AAB present to the town board. And so wanted to discuss, how we might prepare for that. And then sort of picking up this item from prior meetings of really getting an understanding of what the cell tower application process looks like and all the considerations that go with that, including the proverbial or the so-called shot clock and when that comes into play, and how we can advise the town to avoid certainly any legal issues, but also understand where the town has rights and say, and where it doesn't, particularly vis-a-vis federal regulations and laws. And increasingly in my discussions, my understanding is that the carriers have quite a bit of leverage in these things. So I think it would be good for us to understand all those points.
When they're looking to do it? Is it, I mean, they meet every other Monday? When
In terms of
town board, like when would they want us to
no, I have not heard any definitive schedule on that, but if the cityscape study really comes out in at the end of September, then this moratorium that's in place would sort of come off. So I would imagine, given the tone of the presentation that Homeland Towers gave earlier in the month, that they're going to press forward with an application, probably soon thereafter. So better to be proactively prepared. And then we'll have public comment. So we've got a few people here in the room with us, and a few that have joined via Zoom. So maybe at the appropriate juncture, we'll open the floor for public comment as we've done traditionally. I guess I should start by moving to adopt the minutes from our last meeting. We've got a second discussion. Okay. I got 2 ayes.
Right, I'm an aye, yes.
All right, so the minutes are hereby adopted, and we will post those to the website. And then that brings us to sorry, here I just got a text message from Tony. Let's see what that's about. Good. So any thoughts or comments on what Homeland presented to the board earlier this month? And just to recap, they indicated that the proposed alternate site next to the South Salem Animal Hospital was not accepted by the second carrier, which I'm pretty sure was Verizon. I think AT&T was okay with it. Verizon said it was not going to work for them. And so in the presentation to the board, they seem to really focus on the Salt Dome site. And for whatever reason, they also presented a monopine solution as their sort of first option, which I thought was interesting.
The mighty oak.
The mighty monopine. Any thoughts on that from the board?
Yeah, I would like to bring one thing up. I mean, we talked about it last time. I touched on it briefly, and that was I mean, the church was summarily dismissed because they felt that it wasn't viable, and that study was done a long time ago. Since then, the president of the church wrote a letter, and it's been a long time since they've been out. I'd like to read that letter from George Van Martyr, who is president of the South Salem Presbyterian Church. But I don't know if you guys saw this. Did you guys see
I
this?
don't know that I saw it. Is
Okay,
it
well,
the recent letter? This is
okay.
the one from the prior review.
October,
Okay.
2020.
I mean, you want to read that in the record?
Sure. So it
Do
came
we
from,
need to have an approval of that, I guess. I mean,
That's fine.
okay,
Okay,
it says, Dear Supervisor Parsons, this was in October of 2020, October 6th. That I'm writing as president of the Corporation of the South Salem Presbyterian Church to express our continued interest in hosting a cell tower serving the local area in the steeple of our church. As you may recall, I met with a representative from Homeland Towers several years ago to review our facility. You may remember while the location was not optimal, it was a viable one. There were several concerns expressed, which I've reviewed with the Board of Elders, none of which we believe are insurmountable. Based on the discussions that we have been following at the town meetings and the newspapers, it appears that several other proposed locations present problems of their own, and that at this time, the county is conducting its own study of the proposed locations with the hope of creating a more complementary plan of coverage. One, it's expressed at our meeting with the Homeland that the current church tower was not tall enough for the required antenna, and that historic and structural issues might prevent height from the height being raised. However, upon examination of the steeple, it is constructed on the base of 12-inch concrete block, which also, while the location is historic, the church was consumed by a fire in 1973 and replaced with a postmodern design with a steeple that was much shorter than the original part for budgetary reasons. As can be seen in historical pictures, the original steeple was significantly taller. Two, there was also concern expressed for the availability of space for the generators, ancillary equipment, and fuel for up to 3 carriers. Upon consideration, there should be ample space available along the north side of the building, out of view of the street, easily accessible from the driveway, which could be screened from the graveyard. There are also a number of storage options with the buildings and attic, all adjacent to the steeple, which itself is above the eastern entrance of the building. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, George Van Martyr.
oh, thanks, Sam, for doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I also heard that someone had said that each carrier has to have its own generator. But I can, if that's something new, it's certainly not the case at Adams Lane in Pound Ridge.
Mhm.
And it's not the case at the most recent cell tower at the Pound Ridge Ambulance Corps, which I have a picture of, and you can see there's one generator for the whole, not only for the building, but for all the cell towers.
Yeah.
For all the carriers.
Yeah,
So originally Verizon wasn't part of that generator, what they were supposed to be, and they were subsequently put on that. So one generator serves all.
mhm.
So
Okay, I think that makes a really good point, because the viability of the site probably increases significantly if they don't have to have 3 pieces of infrastructure
Sure,
for
sure.
each of the carriers
yeah,
to support the generators. And I think we had a discussion in the past with both Homeland Towers and the carriers about this, and there's a strong preference for the carriers to have their own backup systems, but I don't know that it's a requirement. And that could be something that, as we think through advising the town on policy, that we make a recommendation that they look to encourage
right.
consolidation of the infrastructure, because regardless of where they're going to put a tower, the footprint is is going to be an issue, and minimizing that footprint seems like it makes sense.
I think it also addresses many of the issues that the community has brought to our attention of the town board. You know, you're not gonna have, I joke about the mighty oak.
Yeah,
You're not gonna have the mighty oak, as mentioned in George's letter. The steeple originally was much taller.
Yeah.
As referenced in, I can't reference it here because I don't have the original picture, but the original pictures of the church are around online, and if you look, you can see it's different. As far as space for the equipment goes, equipment technology has changed dramatically. So there's plenty of space there, whether it be in the attic or like even in the belfry, it's a wide open space, and there's a closet right down at the base of the steeple, which can be used as well. So there's that. I ultimately, I guess, like what I'd like to do is have those guys come out and reevaluate the church.
well, on that note, I mentioned this to Sam prior to the meeting that you know, I have wanted the South Salem Church to be evaluated as an alternative. And George Van Martin, being a neighbor of mine, had discussed the possibility with him on and off. I did reach out recently. I think it was last week, based on you know, the thinking that the Saltome site decision is coming to a head, and any alternatives that are presented to that should be evaluated and presented fairly urgently. And as far as I know, the only alternative to the Saltome site that's been presented is the site near the recycling center, or whatever we're calling that, which Homeland Towers has indicated that they're not as interested in. And besides that, there's no private property options that have come forward that are interested in siting a cell tower installation other than the South Salem Presbyterian Church.
I do it.
Well,
But I live in the valley.
yeah, and so, well, and I guess that's the other point, that, you know, all indications are that the, you know, I think it was even mentioned in our last meeting that, you know, the epicenter between the two towers at Lee and Levy and the town park is almost exactly at the Saltome site. And all the cityscape study, what we've seen and heard from the carriers directly, as well as what Homeland Towers presented, that we're going to need a cell tower in close proximity to where the Saltome is. And you know, the South Salem Church is not exactly on there. It is in proximity, and I just feel it's worth investigating thoroughly before you know, to see if it's viable before it's too late to do so. So I spoke to a consultant who I found on the internet that specializes in advising churches on housing wireless infrastructure in their steeples, which I guess is a thing, because many churches are facing financial hardship of one form or another, and it's additional revenue stream. And he told me ultimately that it's, you know, as we've heard from others, it's the carrier's decision. They're making the investment and funding the tower. So he recommended that, you know, that the town asked the carriers to look into it. So I had Tony reach out to them, or supervisor can call, has to reach out to both Verizon and AT&T. Verizon has indicated, I don't know if we've heard from AT&T, but Verizon has definitely indicated that they're going to look at it again, and they're going to look at it again via Homeland Towers, which is their developer in this region. And Homeland Towers has said that they're going to take another look at the site. And they've invited the AB to join them.
Right.
We'd love to have you there, Sam, because you know the church facility is better than most, and I've talked to George Van Marder as well. I'll try to figure out when that's scheduled so that we can be there. There is, obviously some obstacles there. Holman Towers has again indicated that they've looked at it and it didn't prove viable, but they're going to look at it again. I've also made the point that you just made through George's letter that the existing tower, the existing steeple is not the original steeple, much shorter, and that architecturally and otherwise, it seems like that it can support a taller steeple, and under those considerations, would it be viable?
And also the communities as well.
Yeah.
That's certain stress, there's a lot of communities.
I just have two
Oh, I got it.
questions.
Yeah.
How tall is the current steeple and how tall can it get? Because and how much room it's gonna be. You can have all the
Yeah.
room on the ground that you want, put generators or whatever, but the real thing you're looking for is up in the air.
Yeah.
So if it gets to 100 feet tall, you're gonna get the first equipment at 95 feet, the next one 20 feet lower, and the next one.
But that's strong.
That's true on any tower,
Yeah.
but if you start at 135 feet
Right.
on a different.
That's a more elevated
Yeah.
site as well, so
Exactly.
maybe the height
So,
requirement.
Well, if you look
My
at the
point
height,
is, and it comes down to the carrier.
right,
If the
Yeah.
carrier says no, one carrier says yes, one says no,
right.
then Homeland says, we don't have the backing to do this, so.
Well, the carriers are going homeland, so that's why it's important that we also kind of talk together about this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same page.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but it would be good to know the facts on, what the current.
Yeah,
steeple is.
no,
It's
absolutely.
55 feet tall, so it can go to 75 feet, because I don't think it can go to 100 feet. I mean, that would be a pretty tall,
You can go to 100 feet, you could go to 150 feet there,
as the steeple.
that's the steeple, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
No matter
know.
how much money you want to throw.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. It has to be viable under economic circumstances, I'm sure.
Take all matters into consideration.
But I just want to assure that, they're evaluating based on a
No,
rebuild the steeple. There's also a possibility they could do a dual steeple structure. I've been attracted to this idea ever since Cityscape has mentioned that we don't have any concealed towers in town, and everything else being equal, if you could conceal the tower, that would be great. And
I
So I
think
just don't want to know. I want to hear what their objections are, and if they're viable, if they're.
yeah, if we know around them, then.
Let's work together on it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that, my sense of this is that proposal has kind of been dismissed without
Right.
really having been dug into deeply in the way that you're talking about, Sam. And, I think optimal from Homeland Towers perspective and optimal from the community's perspective are two different things.
Right.
Right, and so I think viable should be the threshold there. And then when we talk about optimal, well, there's all sorts of other trade-offs in terms of optimal. Maybe it's not the absolute optimal location, but if it can be a concealed tower, then that might be optimal from the community's perspective. And, I really feel very strongly that it's really, to be fair to our whole community, we have to make sure that every possible option has been investigated thoroughly and in good faith. If we are going to put, or the town is thinking about putting a cell tower somewhere that people don't want to, and this is a unique site and they actually do want it, like,
Right.
fantastic.
Mhm.
But if that's being talked about, then whichever part of town that is, we really owe it to everyone to make sure that we've gone through all the different alternatives and that we understand, number one, whether they're viable, and then number two, what are all the trade-offs for each one? Well, signal might be better here, but the visual would be better if it was over here. And so that, I think that's how we need to think about advising the town board, not just thumbs up, thumbs down, but what are all those different trade-offs? And I think that this is what we need to explore a lot more thoroughly.
No, I agree with everything you said, Lynn. I just, I would want to be the last one to feel like we're contributing to blocking needed infrastructure in the town for non-valid reasons. And I just feel like this is the window where we have to really determine if this is a viable option once and for all. So that seems to be in motion. I'll keep everyone posted on that, as we hear more. But for the public record as well, wanted to put that out there that we are looking at that as what really appears to be the only viable option to the salt dome at this point.
Let's see what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
great.
what was the reason they gave, Joe, for the DPW site, I think they call it? They're not as interested in that
So
site.
I don't know that they've given a.
Because he just said the town didn't want to.
I think when Homeland was here before us, as well as before the town board, they mentioned, I think they mentioned the opposition from the Truesdale Lake community. I don't know how we weigh the opposition.
Different communities.
From different communities, so that's.
It's not on site where it's wanted, then there'll be
Yeah.
opposition from every community.
But I don't think they said that it's not viable from a signal coverage standpoint, so.
Let's, I mean,
They were pretty simple.
comes down to it,
Yeah.
November, we'll
Yeah.
vote, add it to the ballot. Where do you want the tower? If
So
I wish it were that easy.
So I feel like if I was one of the representatives on the town
Mhm.
board, I would want all of this information,
Sure.
Yeah.
not just, okay, Homeland says this is the best spot, so
Yeah.
it's either thumbs up or thumbs down to
Yeah.
that, but okay, what are the reasons why, even ones that have been rejected, I feel like it's on us to advise the town board so that they understand exactly why they were rejected, because if I'm one of them and I might do my business in the community, they're gonna come up to me and say, hey, why didn't you put it here? Why didn't you put it there? So I think for us to collate all of that stuff and make sure we're clear why this one kind of fell out of consideration or what the different trade-offs were for each, I think that's going to be the best way for the town to proceed, or, if the town does decide that they want to move to a referendum, that they can put that information out there the most publicly as well.
Leave no stone unturned.
But I think that, it's a big thing to do.
Yeah,
If I can put it that way, these projects are unique and that, they help everybody in the community, but some areas bear a greater burden from them than others. And so I think we owe it to our neighbors to make sure that we are exploring all the different options, and so that we can, so that there's a full picture there.
Okay. Anything further on this item? Update on the cityscape wildfire. I sort of gave most of what I said in the opening, that we have indication that it's coming to a close at the end of September. It was extended a bit by the additional town that was added to the study.
Is it North White?
Newcastle.
Newcastle, yeah. But I think my understanding is that the Lewisboro portion is pretty much done already, and what we've seen from Cityscape in their presentation to the board is I think by and large what we're going to see from them. But if I get any new information, I'll let everybody know. But that to me, if end of September is when the study comes out, then that informally anyway ends the moratorium. I imagine there will need to be some sort of declaration by the town board on that matter. But then we should expect another proposal from Homeland Towers on the salt dome and some sort of formal application. And that's the other item that I said before, that I really feel like we need to get a more thorough understanding of what that application process looks like. Because it seems like so far with the Homeland Towers, they presented a fairly detailed proposal, but it didn't cross the line of being a formal application. And when the shot clock and all the legal regulatory triggers come in, and I want to make sure that both the town and we as the advisory board to the town understand that process.
Right, and I mean, who do they submit the application to? How many applications are there? There can't be just one application. They've got to apply to what FCC probably.
Yeah,
And what about the FAA for site?
yeah,
Height, you know, and then the town for usage and area or whatever.
You know, we don't have to worry about federal stuff. They
Okay,
take care of that, I think.
right. But I mean, those are applications, that's their problem,
Yes,
absolutely,
yeah.
right.
Like,
And
that's
that's-
keep it purview.
No, I hear you, but in the application to the town, we should make sure. We can come back with them and say, well, we would like to include emergency services stuff. That's at the point.
Yeah.
which-
well, I think there's that, and for sure, which, you know, came up in their presentation to the town board. You know, as did, you know, something of an offer to, you know, put in landscaping or other things that might, help, beautify the view, but I think there was also.
It's a mighty big.
I had the same thought, but there was also
Right,
some,
might be a better-
there was also a public comment, I think, about the cemetery, and there was some
Right.
discussion that, you know, as a quid pro quo, that they could do some things to repair or beautify the cemetery, but, you know, all these things I think come into consideration. But I think we also need to understand like where the town as a municipality has sway versus where the FCC rules, the federal rules come into play. And so I reached out to Lynn here and asked her if she would be the point person on this, and I guess I probably should formally move that proposition to a vote of having Lynn and Katie be our point person on leading the research of this effort. Do I have a second?
This is for the.
Well, I'd just like to look into what we need to know to understand the
Oh, the
process.
process, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Third.
And also, I'll put you in touch with the person that did it for Pound Ridge. For the
Yes.
2 towers that are there.
Yeah, because I think.
You'll
once
see the
again-
contracts, I sent the contracts, so. you
Yeah, I
can
saw
see
that.
the
Yeah.
contracts.
One of the things that Joseph and I talked about was making sure that as we advise the town on this, that we're not solely looking at it through the kind of perspective of what Homeland Towers are telling us, but that we're
Right.
able to talk
Yeah.
to other municipalities and,
Right.
and make sure that, you know, we're getting the full picture and advising the town to.
We want a second opinion, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the residents will be asking for those same questions.
Yeah.
And so if we don't provide a second opinion,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna be called into question. And the last thing we want is things to be called into question to delay unnecessarily progress.
And there are all sorts of elements of this, you know, the landscaping one you mentioned is
Mhm.
is a great one, Joseph, because. You know, we wouldn't want a situation where we've felt like the town had control over an element of it, that it
Yeah.
had to be constructed in a particular way and presented that. To the community, and then it turned out that actually the town didn't have control over that
Yeah.
element of the project, you know.
Yeah.
Whether that's landscaping or the tower type or that kind of thing,
Yeah,
so.
and even what we're talking about before is like, do they need 3 generators and
Yeah.
backup generators and the rest?
Well,
And again,
I mean,
having the independent
Right.
know-how to know what's true there is.
I mean,
important.
in Pound Ridge too, they spend a significant amount of time on the design of the tower
Yeah.
itself.
Mhm.
Including the color of the tower, of the monopole, and
Mhm.
what it was supposed to, so.
Okay.
But then I think that then one of the meetings we had previously where they presented to us, I think when they were talking about the LVAC pole. There had been some plan for that to be a monopine or whatever that is
Oh.
called.
Yeah,
Then because it fell within some kind of historic district, that became someone else's authority to decide on the design of it. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of
Yeah.
layer that we need to
Yeah.
understand.
exactly. Yeah, no, good. Yeah,
Full understanding.
yeah, no, because it's, you know, it can get pretty convoluted quickly. And, you know, and I think the last thing we want is for the town to end up in a situation like Bedford is in, where they're facing some significant legal issues, which, you know, if we can avoid those, so much better. No, excellent. So, and that sort of brings up the other you know, I reached out to Brian Porco on this because he's been a good advocate for the emergency services thing prior to you joining the board, Sam. So, and we talked a little bit about having you work with Brian on these elements, and I think this comes up, you know, in what we, you know, would want to be prepared to present to the town board if they indeed ask us to do so.
Brian certainly got intimate knowledge of the Lewisboro version of the emergency services.
Yeah, and if you can weigh in on what the neighboring towns, including Pound Ridge, have done,
Right.
I think that would be fantastic.
I can tell you about Pound Ridge. You know,
Okay. All right, so I'll move to make Brian and Sam our emergency services. All right, so.
I don't know, we should maybe Brian.
Well, I sent him a note, but in absentia, but we can.
What else can we have?
Well, I mean, it was an issue and it is going to be an issue in, you know, in the case to be made for the cell tower, because the carriers in the outreach that we made to the carriers when the Vista Tower was down, they said, well, you know, these issues are compounded by the fact that there's not an additional tower here in the Salto vicinity. And there is, you know, I don't want to belittle that there is a legitimate need and concern that should be addressed about, you know, people's ability to call for first responders and for first responders to communicate. And, you know, one through the cellular communications, but two through the emergency antenna that can be placed on the tower as well. And you know, through Brian, he's shared you know, several projects that are being proposed from the county level and otherwise to upgrade the emergency services systems in the area. And you know, maybe there's an opportunity also to figure out how we can coordinate with those efforts. Because the last thing we want is, you know, I don't have all the details, but I guess there were some issues with the Lewisboro Police Department as well. I mean, the last thing we want is the patrol officers not to be able to communicate if there's a emergency situation or.
And what is going to happen is when there's a storm, of course, or something.
Exactly, and you know, and the ability to support the towers with backup generators, diesel and otherwise.
It's not just the generators, it's the service that goes to them, like because all their towers are voice over IP, so it'll be over a fiber line.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, there's a fiber line on the right of the church too, so it's not a data issue, there's no big data issue, there's.
And I think that brings us to the other item of the Optimum internet service. Yeah, I mentioned again in the outset that Sam's been a tremendous resource in terms of letting Optimum know when there are service issues that he's aware of. You know, I think that came out in the survey results from the poll that the Cityscape did. That is, as much as people are interested in better cell service, that they're as interested in better internet service. And you know, just in the rescheduling of this meeting, there was someone that reached out to me that wanted to come to the meeting that was concerned about the internet service primarily and what was being done about that. And you know, so I think there's two things there, and Sam, maybe we'll deputize you, which I sort of have done a little bit because you also sit on the cable advisory committee, and there's some overlap there, but you know, I've reached out again, which, you know, building on Sam's comments, to the gentleman Frank, blanking on his last name now, who's the new government affairs person from Altice USA, the parent company of Optimum, asking him to give us an update on the fiber to the home rollout. which in the presentation that his predecessor gave to the town board back in November of last year, he was saying that that was an end of fourth quarter of this year sort of timetable. Would love to hear confirmation that that is indeed the case. We have seen signal or indications that they're moving on that in creating these juncture boxes, which they got approval from the town board for, and I've actually seen one or two of them that have been put in, and in that presentation in last November, they said that was a significant precursor to getting the service rolled out. So it'd be interesting to see, you know, that the timetable, you know, hopefully is still end of fourth quarter, because I can't help but assume that that's going to help a lot of the issues that you've been noticing and that other residents have been noticing.
It's been very spotty.
Yeah.
In the last week.
It'll be huge, and they'll be able to offer 2 gigabit service on that too. Frank
Frank Oliva, yeah,
Oliva.
okay. And so, and I invited him to come to present to the AEB as well. I figured we would be happy to find out
Where are my rocks?
where we can, how we can help that process. And then also, you know, see what could be done to leverage, you know, the fiber that is already present or being put in, you know, for other uses, including wireless antenna that it could serve other parts of Lewisboro, including on smaller towers and microsites. And I think that would be a really fun discussion if we can have them in to talk to us about that.
That'd be great. Get a timeline.
And yeah, because I mean, you can't help but assume that you know, they're not investing large amounts of money in improving the existing coaxial infrastructure.
So it's kind of like what Verizon did with their copper,
Uh-huh.
you know, in Pound Ridge, where they're offering FiOS there. They say, you know, if your copper is broken, we're not going to fix it.
Yeah,
We'll give you FiOS.
yeah. I mean, I haven't heard any indication that we're there yet, but I can imagine that could be coming.
But they also want, I mean, you know, they would want to have the fiber because they won't have us complaining.
I would hope so. And I think you brought up at the last meeting that I was reminded from the minutes that, yeah, I guess there's been experience when it comes time to rip out the coaxial cable, they basically come and do it. And so we should just be mindful of what that could mean in various places for various constituents.
I heard they did that in North Stamford. They just said, we're gonna come in, out comes the copper, and we're gonna dig a trench to your house for the fiber. I read that on Nextdoor.
Mhm.
A couple of people were complaining about that, just. So
Okay.
have a look at Nextdoor and you'll see, look up Cablevision.
And I guess before we open to public comment and close, is there on this item of presenting to the town board, any thoughts on, you know, what we want to focus on?
I think it's important that we make sure we have our ducks in a row before we close. So if they can not make a move forward until we have finished exploring. Finished to be
Okay.
present,
And what, and how will we define finished exploring?
meet with the people and go over the church.
Okay,
Find out what,
Okay.
turn that stone over. Completely, rather than just sort of peek under it, let's kick it over. And then we can come with knowledge, with the more information.
Yeah.
So I think the townspeople will like that.
I think that's definitely true, and also presenting, we're not just gonna be focusing on this site, there are other potential sites. I don't know if the town board wants to hear the other potential new sites.
Right.
At this point.
Isn't there an island in the middle of Truesdale that they could stick one on?
I'm
There
all
you go.
for that.
That's what I love.
Just a generator.
so basically, what Cityscape had recommended.
Yeah, there are
very
about 3 or
other
4 gaps.
pockets, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they're very much less well developed. And
Yeah.
knowing what properties are available.
Yeah.
And approaching people about that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
We should do a
Yeah.
holistic presentation of the entire town. Here are the gaps.
Yeah.
This is what we've heard from the survey, and also you just look at the electronic map, or you just drive around.
Yeah.
town, And you know where everything is going, so you just kind of highlight those areas and you match them up to the map.
Yeah,
Cityscape did, and AT&T has done.
Yeah.
Where the gaps are, and we present that and say, we're here with this project, but we're, at a much earlier stage with these 3, 4, 5
Yeah.
other sites. I mean, I don't know how many
Yeah.
total sites there are gonna be. So,
yeah, and maybe we should dig into the results from that survey. I did send Dan Walsh
Dan,
the summary of Rob's.
we just did a survey.
Rob's excellent summary. I said, Rob, Dan, before we do another poll,
Make sure I read.
let's read this one.
We
Yeah.
can do it again.
But I think
Okay.
it's a really, bringing together both that side of it, which is, where are the gaps, what are the potential options for each one of those things?
Mhm.
And as we talked about at the start, what's viable, what's not,
Yeah.
what are the trade-offs for each? I think that's one side of it. And then the other side is
Yeah.
the other element we talked about, which is, okay, what's the process? What would decision making look like? Where would the town have
Mhm.
control? Where would, the town not have control? What are the timelines? I think that's
Yeah.
really important to bring both of those things together.
And actually reminds me of the other element that came up at that town board meeting. I think it was Councilwoman Renda mentioned the economics of it in terms of revenue and I think it would be interesting just to make that available to potential private property owners, so they really have an understanding of what revenue potential is there for them if they had room for a cell tower on their property.
I have a spot at my house.
It's because I think Homa Towers, they mentioned their formula. I think it was a 2,000 a month minimum plus a profit share of 20-30% on what they earn, but they didn't really spell out what that amount looked like. And I just feel like that would be interesting to
That'd
know.
be a trade secret almost.
I don't, it can't be a trade secret. I mean, the town must know what they're.
Well, I mean, some people are getting paid this,
Oh, I see.
and some people are getting paid this.
Yeah,
I
So
don't,
I don't wanna be like.
yeah, and it probably is it's obviously a factor how many carriers are on the tower. How important the location is. I imagine, to some degree
and
that.
if there's a site that's on private property, and it works,
Yeah,
that should be the focus. Because you can't always have public property in all these different places.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the chances that a town is gonna own a property in all the places where you need infrastructure is highly improbable. Okay. So that's our agenda. I guess I'll move to open for public comment. Do I need a second for that?
Yeah.
So I guess we'll take public comment. Last time we did public comment, nobody said, nobody put their name forward. So I've got to remember to ask people, ensure that people state their name and I guess their hamlet where they're from before we go into that. Full name.
Yeah.
It's easy when you're on Zoom because it's sort of there. But I see Adam Stolro has hand up. Adam.
Hi, thanks very much. You got my name right the first time. I appreciate that. So,
Well, I think this is your second appearance, I think. So
I think so. I don't know if I spoke last time. I'm an environmental attorney with the firm of Cy Paget and Rozelle. I represent a couple of the folks who are on the call-in at the meeting, Dean Travelino and Carol Cernak, and some others. So I wanted to thank the board for their thoughtful discussion on this tonight. I had a couple of comments. First on the timeline, and I may be able to help out a little here. My understanding is that there is no application really until the town board says that they're interested in leasing a site. So I think the town has a significant amount of leverage here, unlike if Homeland was coming to the town with a privately owned site or, a site that it had a lease on. So my understanding is that there would not be a shot clock. But I think, I'm glad that the board will be looking into what the process will be. I have this other concern about maintaining all of the good protections that the town has in its code for the siting of cell towers. And so it's not clear exactly what the process will be if the town board decides to go through a leasing process with Homeland versus having Homeland go through the planning board. So I'm very interested in answers to those questions as well, because I don't think it's really been decided what that will look like. The next comment is on the town being able to hire its own consultant on Homeland's dime, the way that they would be able to for, say, planning board or zoning board applications. And I think, it would be great for the AAB to consider making that recommendation to the town board. My most recent experience on the cell tower permitting issues was in the town of Bedford, where I represented a group of residents who live near Indian Hill Park and were interested in keeping a cell tower out of the park. We worked with a consultant called Gunnarsson Consulting. They're out on the West Coast. And Gunnarsson was very good in coming up with solutions that involve shorter macro tower installations. So these are not like not micro antennas, but the same type of antennas that are on a tower, only in shorter and concealed locations. And they were very helpful in coming up with multi-location solutions that I think might, be part of the solution here. So, we've mentioned the animal hospital site, the church steeple, and it may be that instead of having one location, which obviously would be Homeland's preference, that this may be a situation where some carriers, are happier with the, could use the church steeple. Another carrier would be fine using the animal hospital. And, maybe there are other sort of single carrier sites that could be considered. And so if the town is looking for a consultant, I'd be happy to share my experience, in further detail with you about working with Gunnarsson. I think that's all I have, and happy to answer questions if you have.
Thanks, Adam. Any other comments? Anyone in the live room here?
Yes, I'll come. I wasn't going to, but unfortunately.
Dean probably knows.
105 Spring Street, South Southampton. Lynn basically repeat what she said, right? Particularly about the definition of what optimal means for the carriers versus optimal for the community, which can include the carriers. I really came here personally because sometimes I'm very frustrated at the way that Homeland Towers prices out information. Like, for example, church and whether it was viable, and it turns out that they never come back and responded to Van Mar's letter. I get a stronger voice for statements like that. But I think what I heard from the town board's perspective, they asked a lot of interesting questions about coverage and what it really means practically for all the sites. I think that I was a little worried up that it was brought up about whether or not the Salto would be within the 150-foot town wetland camper, and the Homeland's answer was we just ignore it. We just ignore it, which, and to go back to the Cross River cell tower, which they were grateful to have something so Cross River. That design went to the Historic Preservation people of Albany. And somewhere in the shuffle, the planning board has spent a lot of time on redesign of the tower. It's completely shut out of the process. If you go to the planning board meeting, when that happened, they were not very happy. They made a statement on the camera about it after the fact. So, but I think that this board and the town board was asking the right questions. Look at what the real practical effect of the coverage maps really means to the town of Lewisboro. I was a little frustrated when they make comments about the, animal hospital versus the other, one carrier and the other carrier. Someone asked a very simple question, just for information purposes, what was the difference in the matrix of, and the design? Why does one carrier, one doesn't? What are the values they use? You never answer. So they stay on top of them. I just think that they don't really answer questions. That's sort of understand that.
All right, thanks, Dean. Any final questions?
Yes, Steve Shapiro. I just want to loop back to the internet thing that you guys were talking about, Sam was talking about. I know Sam's going to share this, but we have 3 members of the cable advisory board here. So I wasn't.
Does that represent a quorum?
Yes, you're gonna have a dual meeting at this point,
Know about that 2 gigabit service option you were talking about?
That's common in Pound Ridge via fiber via another carrier,
Uh-huh.
but when you go fiber, it really unlocks a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, well, just because, all I wanted to mention is that I think that we've had this situation in a lot of town that we've discussed on the cable board about Optimum having kind of a monopoly, and I think lately Optimum, we might all agree, has been sub-optimum sometimes. So just when you guys get some info on internet options, will you share, I know Sam, share it with the cable board, so I think we've been talking about this for a long time and have had nowhere to go because we really had no other options. A lot of town, I know we have fires in like Gold's Bridge area. So all I wanted to say was that I think some of us on the cable board have been really anxious to work on the same things that you guys want to work on in terms of internet service is just so crucial now to our community, especially with everyone working from home. We all know that. So
Okay.
definitely, we're just to let you know, at least from my standpoint on the cable advisory board, we have needed to address this for quite a while and find other options. So please share with us.
Okay.
And the chairman's here, so I don't want to speak for him.
Well, now hold on a second, hold on. $5, please. That's an advisory fee.
Sam would be great at following up with cable as an outage.
Absolutely.
Esther,
Yeah.
grateful for. But for the record, our advisory committee, we're not subject to open meeting, so there's no harm here.
Okay, no, I Sam is gonna keep both boards informed, I think. All right, so why don't we pull board and we can adjourn, so I move to close the public comment. Second. Okay, so public comment is closed. Any thoughts from you, Sam, since you're the man of the hour here?
No. Oh, I don't feel like I'm in the hot seat.
Okay, okay,
No, I got nothing, I've had nothing.
okay.
Further than all the stuff I've beaten up.
All right, well, thanks for sharing the letter from George. Lynn,
No, I've got nothing further. I think I said, what.
Yeah,
my response to everything, and as usual, just want to thank the community for coming along and being involved and letting us hear their opinions and their thoughts as well. It's always really useful.
thanks, Lynn.
I just want to plug the wireless master plan study. I did a summary of it in October of 2021.
Uh-huh.
And just want to circulate it more. It's available on the town website under the AAB, under Lewisboro Wireless Master Plan Study. There's a couple of PDF downloads. So it takes all 467 responses and kind of summarizes it, but then also I put verbatim everyone's comments, so unfiltered.
And you did a great job for that. And that reminds me, like, we should talk about presenting that to the town board too.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, we should put that into our presentation as well, for sure.
I thought they could have done the study a little bit better in a couple of ways, but there were not a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, and again, would encourage everybody that's listening now or on the rewatch on YouTube, which has hopefully worked out even with the power surge that we had a few minutes ago. To download those PDFs that Rob mentioned. I will just close with you know, I'm happy to keep the board advised on this effort to look at the South Salem Church, and you know, anything I hear, I try to remember to share through our project board, and I would encourage everybody to be there at the site visit, because I think that will be informative in a lot of ways for the process. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so I will move to adjourn at 8:03 PM.
Second.
So moved, okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bring the meeting to a close.